Well, the arguments are still raging. Is ballistic coefficient a usable number, or is sectional density more important? Or is it velocity? And really, do we need a 30-06 rifle? Boy, you'd better believe we do. And we're hearing from all kinds of people on all kinds of topics. We're going to have a smorgasbord today. Comments, questions, and corrections on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Patreon Jeremy, who looks like he likes the 30-06. He says, hello again, Ron. I saw on your recent video that you guys were asking if anyone under the age of 40 still preferred the 30-06. Well, let's see. When I was younger and was hunting, I took a hiatus. I went to college and a career, and then I got a new bride. But at 29, I was looking to get back into the woods, back into hunting. And my first pick of a rifle was a Savage 111 Trophy Hunter in 30-06. I harvested my first deer with that rifle, which inspired one of my wife's younger cousins to start hunting. So to get him started, I passed down that 30-06 to him, as well as the knowledge on how to use it. Well, suddenly I needed a new hunting rifle, so I chose a Savage 110 Classic chambered in the venerable 30-06 again, and I will be bringing that with me when I go to Africa in March of 2026. So at ages 29 and 30, I bought 30-06 rifles to hunt with, and I continue to choose that as my primary hunting rifle. It has a proven track record, it's incredibly accurate at reasonable hunting distances, and it has had decades of research going into new ways to tweak it and improve it. It may be over a century old, but in my humble opinion, the 30-06 has aged like a fine wine and has never been better than it is today. So there you go. Jeremiah is obviously not an old fud like me, and he still loves the 30-06, and it's doing the job for him. And we've heard from a lot of people who said pretty much the same thing. And honestly, it did surprise me because in recent years, I have just noticed a declining interest in 30-06s. Maybe I'm hanging out with too many young guys or something, but they're talking about all the PRCs and all the long high BC bullets and the big fat cartridges, the short and fat ones, and all the new style. And there are certain benefits to those sorts of cartridges, and as a result, we just don't hear much about the 30-06 until we produce a video saying the 30-06 might be heading for obsolescence. And boy, did the 30-06 lovers come out of the woodwork. So I think I'll have to agree with them. It may be heading for obsolescence, but at a very, very slow pace. Yeah, the honest answer is the 30-06 is still a great all-around cartridge, and it always will be. But eventually it's going to be superseded by something. Hey guys, if you'd like to hang out around the campfire with old Grandpa around, well, the best we can do right now is a digital hangout. We're going to be doing one of those. All of our patrons at the third tier level and above will be able to call in and join us. And I think, Betsy, they're going to be visible, or is it just voice?
Oh, I think they can show their face.
They
Show
can,
ours.
okay, you can show your face if you want to. You're going to probably have to look at my ugly mug, but if you care to join us at this little campfire, we're going to just make it real comfortable and easy, discuss upcoming hunts, maybe trade some stories about past hunts, answer your questions. I know a lot of you have lots of questions about going to Africa for your first safari and that sort of thing. So we're just going to have a hangout, be comfortable, and enjoy one another's company and see if we can't learn from one another. So if you are not a patron, you can join at patreon.com and then look for Ron Spomer Outdoors. All the instructions are there for signing up. Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. So pick your tier, and if you're at the third level or higher, you can join us on this first hangout. And by golly, if it works out as well as we hope, we'll be doing a bunch of those. So hope to see you all there. This is April 24th at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Savings Time. And I don't know how long it's going to go until we get tired of it, I guess. See you then.
We'll send the link.
Say what?
We'll send the link.
Oh, we'll send the link. Whatever that means, guys, Betsy's going to send you the link. Well, let's hear from someone called Earache. This was in response to one of our videos. This was one of the comments on a YouTube video channel. Let's see what it's about. I just got through mounting my scope on my Savage Axis 22-250 that I got back from Savage today. Got it back. I had made the mistake of firing a 6.5 Grendel through it. Ooh, he shot a .264-inch diameter bullet through his oh my gosh, a 22 barrel. 6.5 Grendel through a 22 250. That must have made for some trouble. Let's see what all happened here. Even though it was totally my fault and I admitted my mistakes, they disassembled the firearm, cleaned it, made repairs, and test fired it. And all under warranty at no charge. I am so impressed with Savage that I believe I'm going to a store tomorrow and order a 110 Tactical in 300 Win Mag. Maybe I'll go sight in the 22 250 first, but I'm very impressed with Savage's service. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, I like to hear about companies that do that sort of thing. We often will get the gripes about some company didn't do this right or that right, but boy, when they do things right, we really need to thank them for that, pat them on the back, and give them credit. My question for Earache is, did that rifle, when you shot that .264-inch bullet down that .224 diameter bore, did it explode the barrel? What exactly happened? It sounds like really it stuck together and they just disassembled it, made repairs, cleaned it, put it back together, and it's back in your hands as a 22 250. So I'm assuming that somehow it didn't blow up. I can believe it really because I once shot a 28 caliber bullet, a .284, from a 7mm 08 Remington cartridge through a 25-06, and that's pretty similar, squeezing down to that bullet. And if it's a good soft bullet, thin-jacketed lead core bullet, it seems to squeeze down enough to get through the bore without blowing it up. At least it did for me, and it sounds like that's what happened with you. But boy, tell you what, guys, it's better to shoot the proper ammunition in your rifle and not go stick something else in there like that. But that's another thing about all the different cartridges these days. It's really getting difficult to find chambers that don't take several different cartridges and fire them. You know, it used to be like when they were working with a 30-06 and they made a 270 and then a 280 Remington, they would change things up just enough so that the two couldn't get quite mixed together. A little bit more headspace on a cartridge and that sort of thing. But man, now there are so many different ones that are made by straightening out the walls a little bit or pushing the shoulder back and different things, and you end up finding odd cartridges that will squeeze into the chamber and even fire, but they certainly don't belong there. So do be careful. Always check the head stamp on the cartridge you're shooting against what the roll stamp is on the barrel. If the barrel says 22 250 and you flip that cartridge over, you don't want it to read 6.5 Grendel. You want it to read 22 250. All right, thanks for that tale, and also thanks for patting Savage on the back, Earache. How about Chucky Debris? I have a 7mm 08. I don't hunt with it much. I mainly use my 308 for hunting, for the simple reason that ammo at our local Walmart is always there. They have lots of it. And for my 708, well, it's harder to find ammo. Yeah, I hear that a lot, and I used to always poo-poo that because, come on, you don't have time to go find the right ammo, but I've also been a hand loader for so long that I really don't worry too much about ammunition availability. Also, if I get something that works, if I find a particular factory load that my rifle likes and I like it, I'll buy several boxes of it so that I've got a good supply. But obviously not everyone does that, and thinking back to when I was younger, I didn't either. I'd buy one box of 30-30s and go deer hunting, and then the next year around deer season, I'd have some ammo left and I'd shoot it, and if it got a little bit low, I'd buy another box. But this brings up an important change that's going on, and that is the availability of ammunition. Back in the day, you could go to almost any hardware store and find guns and ammo. You could go to many gas stations and find guns and ammo, and most of the stores, and not just Walmart, but any store like that, the old Kmart stores, but also Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Wards and Penny's and all those old stores from back in the early 20th century. They carried firearms and ammunition. And man, these days it's getting harder and harder to find it. So I think the important thing is to not wait till the last minute, rush into Walmart and expect to find what you need. Jump ahead, work ahead, and plan ahead. But I can understand why people would choose a pretty common cartridge, like a .308 Winchester, over something a little more esoteric, even if the ballistics kind of sound better to you, and they often are on something like a 708 or a 260 Remington or something like that. But man, if it gets hard to find ammo, it just makes a lot of practical sense to get a .308 Winchester. It really can pretty much do everything, and that's one of the rounds that is always going to be out there. All right, let's see what Mike DeSales has to say. I am so poor that I can't even afford these rifles that you're talking about. Instead, I have a Savage Stevens 334 that I got to shoot 0.7-inch groups with at 100 yards. That's pretty impressive. That's 3/4-inch group. I put a night vision scope on it for coyote hunting. Both are on a payment plan, unfortunately. Well, Mike, I'll tell you what, you stick with it and get those paid off. It sounds like you've got yourself a heck of a fine shooting rifle there, whatever it costs. And that's another wonderful thing about today, despite finding it more difficult to get stores selling ammunition and firearms. The firearms companies are making some really inexpensive guns and rifles that shoot well. It's amazing how you can get an inexpensive rifle that shoots under sub-MOA. Because I'll tell you guys, back in the latter half or so of the 20th century, it was pretty hard to find a store-bought rifle right off the shelf that was group 3 shots into 1.5 inches. 2 inches was kind of more standard. So more power to you, man. There's nothing wrong with an inexpensive rifle if you and it are working well together. All right, this is CB68 West Creations. I love my 30-06, but that 6.8 Western has my attention. It really bums me out to think that it might fizzle. The 7mm backcountry is next in line, but I still like the 338s also. It sounds like CB has a pretty common problem there. He likes too many options. I would say this, though, CB, about that 6.8 Western. I have renewed hope in that because I'm just seeing a steady progress towards acceptance and appreciation of that round. It didn't get a really good marketing push when it first came out, but it is a heck of a round, and anybody who studies ballistics begins to appreciate that, and it compares quite favorably with the new 7mm, quite a few of them, and of course it's the short action, and it's got the ability with that fast twist barrel, 1 in 8, some of them are 1 in 7.5, so you can shoot those 160, 165, 170, 175 grain bullets, and that pushes your weights right up there into 7mm land with a 27 caliber bullet. So I think that thing's going to continue to gain steam and appreciation. You're going to see a lot more of them. All right, let's see. Les Krug says, I had taken beaver to Montana. My nephew and his wife tried it, and then they went back for seconds. Oh, he made some beaver. I didn't tell them what it was that they'd eaten until later, and then his wife was mad. But she loved it. Yeah, that's a funny thing. You see it quite often with folks that you don't tell them what they're eating because you think, well, they probably won't eat it if I tell them it's beaver or raccoon or bobcat or some not quite off-the-shelf meat. And then they eat it and love it. And then when you tell them what it was, they are mad at you because they didn't want to eat it. But they liked it. I don't know. Just a strange thing.
I think that's terrible. You need to tell people what they're eating.
See, there's one of them. We did that with Betsy and some buffalo tongue. She was snarfing down that buffalo tongue until she found out what it was. Then she decided she didn't like it. Go figure. Can you explain that one, Betsy?
No, and I don't have to.
She can't explain it either. It's all mind games, folks. All right, let's see what Hans Goyman has to say. I have never even seen a crow or a coyote eat a raccoon. Well, I don't know, Hans. Maybe you need to get out more. But I don't know. Has anyone else seen it? I once saw a badger eating a raccoon. I don't see why a coyote wouldn't eat one, or a crow. I once saw coyotes eating another coyote in Yellowstone National Park. I don't know if that coyote had been run over on the road. It was off the road a considerable distance, and it was winter. But maybe the wolves killed it. But gee, I would think the wolves would eat it. But at any rate, Both magpies and other coyotes were feeding on that coyote. So I can't imagine they'd pass up a raccoon. Now, I've seen crows on the highway run over raccoons. So anybody else have raccoons being eaten by other animals? I just can't imagine that they wouldn't eat it. It's perfectly good meat. You got something to add, Betsy?
I'm confused by the question.
Well, he is responding to all these comments we've been getting about eating strange meats like porcupine and raccoon and things. And he's saying that, shoot, I've never even seen a coyote eat a raccoon.
I got it.
Yeah. All right, let's see what Ron K. has to say. Something about BC here in long-range shooting. Ron, under 500 yards, BC doesn't mean much if you have a high-velocity cartridge like a 7 STW. Well, there's some validity to that, Ron, but I think what you might be missing out on is the wind deflection. When you increase the velocity of any bullet, you are going to definitely reduce the drop at a certain distance. I mean, gravity is always pulling it at the same rate, but it's going so fast that it gets farther downrange before it does fall to the ground or get pulled to the ground by gravity. But pushing it faster and faster does not change the wind deflection all that much, and BC does. If you run your ballistics calculators, you will see this. You get a significant improvement in drops. Won't drop as much, but there's very little difference in the deflection. But if you increase the BC of the bullet, now your wind deflection is a lot less, regardless of the velocity. So there's something to be said for BC under 500 yards. Now, a lot of guys will say that under 500 yards it doesn't matter at all, or especially under 300 yards it doesn't. And yes, it does matter less, but it's still there. And I think we've got more coming up here. I'm seeing BC quite a bit. Kenneth Newton says, in my opinion, BC only matters in shots beyond 300 yards. Under that, I go with sectional density as more important. High-velocity weapons at close range with high BC bullets come apart, and they lose penetration necessary for clean dispatch of game. Now, Ken's onto something as well, but I'm going to have to bring up my old charts here on some BC stuff. We're going to do that in a second. But as far as sectional density, that is a worthwhile number, but it doesn't mean as much as it used to. In other words, I've got some bullets here we can demonstrate with, I think. Back in the day, sectional density was a big deal, especially for large animals, for penetration when most bullets were what we call cup and core. Think of the core lock from Remington, the soft point from Federal, the power point from Winchester, your standard soft points from Hornady and Nosler and all the ones before they came up with partitions and bonded bullets and all that stuff. So you had a soft lead core inside of a gilding metal jacket. Well, the two could come apart, and then they would lose their mass, and then they would lose their ability to penetrate because you no longer have a bunch of weight in that bullet driving through. The individual pieces would be lighter, so they would stop sooner. You would not get a long channel for wounding through the animal. Well, to get it, you needed a longer bullet rather than a short one. And if you're listening to the podcast, just imagine a short, stumpy, round-nosed bullet, which I have in my right hand, and then a long, sleeker spire point bullet in the other. And the one with the long, sleek nose is obviously putting more of its weight in its shank and then less up in the nose, so it gets stretched out. When it lands and expands, the nose mushrooms, but the shank behind it, there's quite a bit of that shank there to continue driving forward. Whereas the stumpier bullet with the round nose doesn't have much shank left in it, so it's going to slow down, even if they're the same weight. So that's something to consider. And sectional density is a cross-sectional density of that bullet. And it doesn't matter what the weight of the bullet is, it matters what the weight is. If it's the same length, the same shape, and the same form, that really doesn't matter. In other words, if you have a 30 caliber bullet and it weighs 150 grains, it doesn't matter if it's a sleek spire point or a flat nose or a rounded, the sectional density is the same. So you don't necessarily get as much shank material in it. But a general rule is if you step up in weight, you're going to get higher sectional density because a 180 grain bullet will have a higher sectional density than a 150. A 200 will have a higher sectional density than a 180, and on up the scale. So you should get better penetration. But when you start making your bullets with harder lead cores, bonded lead cores, all copper, etc., to retain more weight, you do not lose the penetration ability as much because you've retained almost all of the weight in your bullet. Whereas in the old days when you lost it, sectional density mattered more. Nevertheless, it's still a good idea to have a heavier bullet, meaning a longer bullet, for deeper penetration in large animals. Whether that matters more than ballistic coefficient, I would say it does under, as Ken suggests, 300 yards, but don't discount BC entirely under 300 yards. Norman, our next one up here, Norman Hamilton says BC doesn't matter at 100 yards. And there I can pretty much agree. But for all of you thinking along these lines, I want to compare two bullets of the same diameter and the same weight going the same velocity, but one of them has a much higher BC than the other, and we'll look at the different distances. So what we've got is a .308 caliber bullet, 150 grains, going 2,800 feet per second. One is a little round nose, sort of like the one I'm holding again, and the other one is a more traditional spire point. And this one is going to have a boat tail, and this could be one of these sleek high BC bullets at 150. So just think, same rifle. We'll say it's a .308 Winchester shooting these 150 grain bullets. They are both going at 2,800 feet per second. The rounded-nosed stumpy one, we're going to zero them, by the way, at 200 yards. So at 100 yards, the round-nosed stumpy one is going to drop 2.5 inches. The sharply pointed boat tail one with a higher BC is only going to drop about 1.8 inch, 1.85 inches. So it's about 3/4 of an inch less drop already at 100 yards. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not drop, that's elevation. Because we zeroed it at 200 yards, these bullets are a little bit high at 100 because we're aiming uphill, remember that. Now at 200 yards, they're both dead on, but at 300 yards, you've got 12.25 inches of drop out of your stumpy bullet with the low BC, but only 8 inches of drop out of the 150 grain spire point. So there's starting to be significant, guys, at 300 yards. But, you're still going to do all right. But gosh, a foot of drop at 300 yards, that's going to cost a lot of people, a lot of shooters, a good hit. Whereas only 8 inches of drop, you got a lot better chance of being in there. Obviously, you want to be dead on with your shot and not take chances with stuff like that. But it just gives you an idea of the difference BC makes even at 300 yards. But the big difference now is going to be the wind deflection. So once again, we're going to say we have a 10-mile-an-hour right angle wind. It's going to drive that bullet. And how far off will it be at 200 yards? The round-nosed bullet's going to be 8.1 inches deflected. And guess what the spire point is? 3.1. 5 inches of difference. And that's just at 200 yards. So don't say that BC does not matter inside of 300 yards. At 100 yards, you're getting about 1.9 inches of deflection out of the round nose, but you're only getting 3/4 of an inch out of the spire point. So maybe at 100 yards, you can say, yeah, if you're shooting at a deer, it doesn't matter. Little ground squirrel might matter. So don't discount it entirely, guys. Oh, there's one more thing about BC that most of us never think about, and that is retained energy. If you've got a bullet that's not efficient, that means it's not aerodynamically efficient. It's going to be losing energy to drag. And that does get quite significant. Guess what our little round-nosed bullet is doing at 250 yards for a retained energy? It starts off with 2,612 foot-pounds of energy, and at 250 yards, it's down to 976. The spire point bullet at 250 yards still has 1,764. That is a lot more energy. It does not drop under 1,000 foot-pounds of energy until 550 yards. Huge difference from 250 to 550. Good reason to use a more efficient, higher BC bullet. Okay, I hope I've enlightened you. Whether or not you decide to choose it or use it is up to you. All right, now here's somebody that doesn't think point blank range is worth fooling around with. Let's see what John Faulkner has to say. I don't feel that point blank range really is a consideration anymore. With laser rangefinders and modern optics with a ballistic drop compensation style reticle or a dialing turret, the idea is more about retained velocity and energy combined with accuracy and tolerable recoil. Point-blank range, it's really obsolete for modern hunters, even for the guys who are hunters and not long-range only shooters. Well, you're welcome to that opinion, John. I certainly don't share it, having been a student of Jack O'Connor over the years and used his system, maximum point-blank range, quite successfully for my hunting career. I still think it has wonderful applications afield, and that is quick target acquisition and getting a shot off without all this manipulation and dialing and things. There are some highly trained shooters who can range, dial, and shoot pretty darn quickly, but it's just impossible for anybody to put all of that stuff into effect as quickly as a maximum point-blank range shooter who knows that his setup can put his bullet inside of a 6-inch circle out to 300 yards without worrying about the range. Other guys, they zero at 100 and then they have to dial for 200. They have to dial for 250. They have to dial for everything or choose another line in their scope. And quite often I've seen that choose the line thing ruin the day because they choose the wrong line. So I do think you can still utilize maximum point-blank range and then put the dialing on top of it or your BDC reticles. So set things up for a good 6-inch target zone out to 300 yards or whatever your rifle and bullet will deliver. And then after that, you can start dialing. The benefit of that is for all of those relatively close, quick shots that you are pretty confident are within 300 yards, you can just take it. If something's out there at 400 and you need to dial, you'll generally have plenty of time because it's not alerted. But man, if it jumps out of a draw at 200 yards and takes off and stops at an unknown distance, boy, that maximum point blank range can really work for you. All right, I appreciate that, John. We'll see how everybody else weighs in on it after they hear my opinion and yours. I imagine that a lot of the really good scope dialers and such will side with you, and then the old fuds will side with me, but we'll see. Now let's hear from Viking Okazar. Betsy, you're involved in this one. Says, hi, Ron and Betsy. The idea of shooting at animals humanely and ethically are tenets that should be adhered to, but the mechanism for that is not set in stone. When we hunted as a primitive species, neither humaneness nor ethics played any part of the hunt. We just did what we needed to avoid starvation. Having said that, I'm sure that our primal ancestors got as close as possible to kill quickly and efficiently. Not only would you not want to wound an animal and lose that many meals, but tracking that wounded animal uses up valuable calories. Well, in our modern era, we don't need to hunt for food. We need to hunt for our physical and mental health, but that's another subject. So the hunt is seen today as sporting. Sports have rules, and therefore humaneness and ethics show up. When I speak of the mechanism of how we act humanely and ethically, I believe it's up to the individual to determine what is proper and what is not. A commenter on this edition of your podcast wrote that shooting past 500 yards is unethical. He was referencing BC being useless for hunters. That is a blanket statement, and it doesn't ring true to me. A 500-yard shot for him may be unethical, but for the next hunter, a 777-yard shot on a bedded buck from a supported rest may be entirely ethical. I'm a bow hunter, and a few years ago I would have considered any shot beyond 50 yards unethical for me. But last year, I brought my skill level up to shooting 4-inch groups consistently at 100 yards. Suddenly, a 75-yard shot on an elk-sized target didn't feel unethical. What the hunter must do is ensure that their skill level is commensurate with the shots that they're taking at that given animal for the quickest death possible. I guess my whole point is that a lot of people, not just hunters, have strong opinions about right and wrong and not realizing that it's mostly about themselves and their own abilities. Having said that, we all know boneheads who go out there and do stupid things which ruin hunting for everyone. Anyway, thanks for your wonderful podcast. I'm so glad I found it. Greetings from the apparently soon-to-be 51st state. Yeah, I'm going to guess you're from Canada. Oh, I tell you, politics. Yeah, thanks for that. Well thought out, carefully thought out as well. We're going to get disagreements again. I do like your point about it being up to the individual, because even though we can pretty much say it is unethical to say shoot deer over bait. In some states it is, in some states it isn't. Some people think it's unethical. We can also say, well, it's unethical to shoot them from helicopters. I'd say that's unethical. Whether you can do it or not, I think it's unethical. But then again, some people might say, I think it's unethical to use a scope because that's an unfair advantage. And of course, the anti-hunters say it's unethical to shoot it with anything. So it kind of does come down to the individual. But I think as a group, as a culture, we do set some standards that can be adhered to. And of course, fish and game agencies, state to state, do set all sorts of rules. There's some of them are for ethical behavior, but mostly they're addressing mechanics and tools that then lend themselves to better ethical behavior. In other words, if you're in a state that limits you to, say, slug shotguns only, that pretty much going to close down all those 1,000-yard shots that you shouldn't be taking and things like that. Or say no 410s allowed for hunting geese. You know, a lot of people think that something that ought to pass a regulation. But of course, now they've got this tungsten shot that is so deadly that they're using 410s to take turkeys out to 40, 50 yards, for gosh sake. So, yeah, you've got to stay abreast of that. Know your equipment and know your own limitations. And then I think the absolute answer for everybody is to just make darn sure that when you take a shot, you know you're going to score. It's not a hope and a prayer. This is a done deal. All right, thanks for weighing in on that, Viking. Jason Webb. Question, maybe for a future episode. If you were a small-framed shooter, or you were going to have just three rifles, with each a different cartridge, which three would you choose? Oh, this one again. We've done this before. And we're going to have a bunch of favorite firearm things coming up here. We are starting new with my daughter, and we will be using factory ammunition. So far, we have a 22 long rifle for her. That's the way to start them. Now I am torn. I'm leaning towards getting her a 6.5 Creedmoor for deer and pronghorn, but then I'm not sure for bigger game like elk. I'd love your thoughts and alternatives. Well, Jason, I don't know. I think maybe it'll jump in the gun a little bit here. I don't know how old your daughter is, but I would say keep up the training with the 22, and then if she's ready for deer, 6.5 Creedmoor is a great option. That and a 243 are kind of the standards for folks starting out, and they can both certainly do the job. Now, a lot of people are using that 6.5 Creedmoor for elk and even moose, and I know guys out here, I've helped them butcher some animals they've taken with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and they were pretty dead. One shot and done. A lot of good tissue damage, and it just looked like that thing was really doing the job. Choose the right bullet, take a careful shot, and all the rest of it. But I think as she gets older, she will start to show you what she would probably want or need. You have to kind of watch. Is she handling recoil well? Not afraid of it? Then you could step her up to something a little stiffer. You get up into the 7 millimeters in the smaller 30 calibers, and you're going to be just fine. I haven't met an elk or a moose or really even a big bear yet that can stand up to the right bullet from the right 7 millimeter or up in the right place. And I have taken moose with 0.264 inch diameter bullets from a 6.5-06. Not all that powerful, but boy, if the right bullet, did the job, one shot kill. So you got a lot of options there. I am not going to tell you which one to get, but something in that 7 millimeter 308 range I think is going to do the trick for you. But wait and see how she does. Okay, now here is a Facebook post we did recently. It simply said, if you had to choose if you won the lottery, suddenly had a bunch of money, and then could buy your dream rifle, anything you wanted, what would you pick? And boy, did we get a lot of responses on this one. Hundreds and hundreds of them. And I just thought it would be fun to read some of those and give you guys a little spotlight on your selections. So this is Tanner Mitchell, who says, an original Sharps 45-110. There's one you don't see every day, but that one is kind of popular with folks who like old westerns, especially like Quigley Down Under. Think of a Sharps rifle like that. They actually make them. There's the modern Sharps are being made, so you can pick that one up. Caleb Alger would like to get a Henry 360 buckhammer because he says, I have always wanted a lever gun, but I've also wanted to be able to hunt in the straight wall states. Well, good one. That's why they made that 360 buckhammer. It's essentially the 30-30 straightened out. Got quite a bit of taper to it, but it's got straight walls. And it shoots about like a 35 Remington, a little more powerful than that. Andel Schur says he wants an original Melvin Forbes built ultralight rifle in .284 Winchester left hand, but he's not sure if he ever made a left-handed action. But I can dream, he says. Randall, I'm not sure either, but I think Mel did make some left-handeds. I have an original ultralight .284 Winchester right-handed. If you want to come over and shoot it sometime, I'll be able to run the bolt for you. By the way, if you can settle for the new ultralight arms rifle, the Model 20 is being built with slight modifications by Wilson Combat. They are making pretty much the same rifle, but they've put a little different barrel on it than Mel used, and they're using a different stock, but it's still a real lightweight one with the same lines. And they also put a bottom metal on it, so the floor plate will open. Mel always used blind magazines. Okay, let's see. Cash Carlson. He wants a Winchester 1873 1-in-1000 rifle. Ooh, that's a pretty penny rifle there. You will need to win the lottery to buy one of those. If I remember right, there are only around 100 to 150 of those still out there that people know about. And this is pretty much the standard Winchester model 1873 lever action rifle. This is the one where they put the first 4440 center fire cartridge in. And it was made famous in a movie by Jimmy Stewart called Winchester 73. And what they did in that movie was they played on what the actual Winchester Rifle Company did. I don't know what year it was that they did it, but they thought to sell more rifles, they would take out of the line all the rifles that shot extra accurately, and then inscribe on the barrel 1 of 1,000. They were only going to have 1,000 of them and then sell them at a premium price. I don't remember if they upgraded the wood and all the rest of it. Probably did. But those became quite the centerpiece for discussions, if nothing else, because they didn't sell very many of them. I don't think they even sold 500 of them. But that's what made them rare, but that was pretty special back in those days to offer a rifle that would shoot. I don't remember what their guarantee was. Sub-MOA maybe? But they mostly got famous in that movie, and then suddenly everybody was interested in the Winchester 1873. The movie people called it the rifle that won the West, or the gun that won the West, and that started that whole thing. So, yeah. You're going to find a 1-in-1000 1873. You're going to have a rare piece that's going to set you back some lottery money, Cash. All right, Kevin DeFrance says he wants a Rigby Rising Bite in 577 Nitro Express. Whew, that is a piece. The Rising Bite is a double barrel, side by side, the old traditional double barrel elephant gun. Man, that is going to cost you a pretty penny too, but that's a good option. Now, Paul also wants something big and heavy. He wants a Rigby or a Holland & Holland, a bespoke double, another side-by-side double, but he wants it chambered in 470 Nitro Express. And then he spent the rest of his lottery money in Africa hunting everything I could. Dream on, Paul. That's a good one. Tanner Barrett wants a Barrett M82A1. Tarrant says, I have been wanting one of those since I was little, and I knew what they were since my last name was Barrett. Barrett wants a Barrett. John Brandstatter says if it would be for sale, I'd like the Pre-64 Model 70 Winchester in 270 Winchester, and I want the one that Al Beeson built for Jack O'Connor about 60 years ago. That one's going to cost you a pretty penny, too. I have actually held that rifle, the number 2. I think, if I remember right, O'Connor had 3 of those built by the same guy out of Spokane, Washington, Al Beeson. And number 2 was his favorite. It was the most accurate of the bunch. And I got to hold and shoot that one. It has a wild sheep engraved on the steel butt plate and a few other cool things. Yeah. John Canterbury. He wants a Park West chambered in 22-250. You can get one of those right now. All you have to do is order it. They'll build you one. Park West Arms is what Michael David Blunt wants. He wants a SD-76 in a 243 Winchester. He wants it all dressed up with the finest walnut and bluing, maybe some intricate gold engraving and fine knurl work. I would never shoot it. I'd probably just hang it on the wall like a work of art. Well, Michael, I know the guys are going to build that for you. I had the privilege of touring the Park West plant and watching them make some rifles, and gosh, the guys that build those things just do a great job. The woman who checkers almost all of the stock, Karen, has been there for, since the Dakota days, pretty early on. And I visited with her, and she actually grew up in a small town in South Dakota, only about 45, 50 miles from where I did. So we were like old home folks meeting there. But she just does some beautiful work in the checkering. And then if you want the engraving, another guy who worked for Dakota and is now on his own, he's really into engraving, and he is an up-and-coming engraver of world standards, world quality stuff. He studied under the masters in Italy, and he is an artiste of the highest order. His name is Jesse Kaufman, and he's got his own business now, just engraving, and he gets a lot of Park West rifles into engrave, so you would probably get one of those. And Jesse happened to grow up in a town only about 12 miles from where I grew up. He was on a farm, I was on a farm, 12 miles between us, but there were also about 12 or 15 years between us, so I really didn't know him. I did see him a couple of times when he was a youngster, but didn't realize at the time that he was going to become a master gun builder. Cool. How about Jared? Jared Vox says he wants a custom HS precision rifle in either 7 PRC or 300 PRC. Good choice, Jared. We don't cover those HS precision rifles nearly as much as we should. I have worked with quite a few of those over the years, and I still have one that's one of their lightweight 2000s in 300 WSM, and that thing is sub-MOA accurate with almost anything I put in it. Great choice right there. HS Precision Rifles out of Rapid City, South Dakota. Sean Jervis wants any Ruger number 1. Yeah, we had a lot of people lusting after a Ruger number 1. That's a falling block single shot that's pretty famous and justifiably so. And fairly affordable too. Well built, some pretty interesting wood on them most of the time, but not one of those high-end European ones that cost more than an arm and a leg. Casey Weaver, I'd probably put together a custom rifle with either a 6.5 PRC or 7 PRC. It would have a proof carbon barrel, a gray bow / Macmillan / Manor stock with an Area 419 ARCA lock rail, a trigger tech, Diamond 2-stage trigger, a Silencer Co. Scythe TI, an Atlas bipod, and I'd top it off with a CZ Co. 420X and an ARC M4 bracer, maybe a spur. Oh my goodness. This fella knows exactly what he wants. He's got all the elaborate parts labeled. He probably knows the individual serial numbers on them all. More power to you, Casey. Dream on. David Gordon said he wants a pre-64 757 Mauser in a Model 70 Winchester in the highest grade I can find. That would be a delightful piece right there. Yep, kind of the highlight of the 20th century rifles. Bill Terry, Smith & Wesson Pump Action Lightning. I have always liked that rifle. Bill, I think you've got a couple of things switched around here. It was a Colt pump action rifle. It was called the Lightning. I don't think Smith & Wesson had a pump action. They now have a lever action. I don't know if they ever did. I think originally they had one. They never really quite brought it to market or something. But yeah, I think you're thinking of the Colt Lightning pump action rifle. I shot one, a replica made by, Italian Firearms Works had it, right, Betsy? Was it a Pedersoli?
I have no idea.
Yeah, we've got a video on it, guys. If you want to see it, it's on RSO TV. We used to have it on the YouTube channel, but I think we had to take it down because we showed some no-nos on it. But that one was a fun little gun. You might check out my regular channel. It might still be on there. Otherwise, it's on RSO TV. But boy, that thing is slick and fast. It's really fun to shoot. Now let's got Jason Gilmer. He wants, oh my goodness. Jason merely wants whatever that is that shoots out of an A10 Warthog. Well, Jason, you're going to have what they call a GAU-8 30 millimeter hydraulically driven 7-barrel Gatling gun. It shoots a 6,096 grain bullet at 3,324 feet per second, and it'll crank out 3,900 rounds per minute. Now, 30 caliber is about 1.25 inches, a little more than that in diameter, and that rifle, if I remember right, up in the nose of that Warthog weighs about 500 pounds. So you're going to have a bit of a hike up the mountains to elk country with that one. Oh, I should have run some numbers on the energy that bullet carries. A 6,096 grain bullet at 3,324 feet per second. Whoa. Okay. Ma, what's this? Something I wrote, it appears. Yes, indeed. I wrote this, must have been on a Facebook post or something, but I put it in here for a reason. Let's read it and find out. Hey, everybody, much though I prefer to showcase guns and ammo here, a more serious issue is our seriously declining wildlife populations. I don't know about you, but without wild places and wildlife to hunt, my firearms become rather superfluous. Wildlife and wild places are disappearing faster than ever. Ducks Unlimited today reported that North American songbirds have declined 11% to as much as 43% since 1970, while dabbling ducks and diving ducks have increased 24%. Now here's my question. How can hunted birds increase their populations while songbirds, for which there is no hunting season, decrease? Well, of course, the answer is habitat. While waterfowl hunters have been pouring billions of dollars into saving, improving, restoring, and flat-out manufacturing wetland habitats, society at large has been ignoring our grasslands, brushlands, and forest habitats. As a result, living space for songbirds has declined radically. While this is sort of sad, in the next 10 to 20 years, it's likely to become critically tragic, with many species expected to disappear entirely. They'll be extinct, like the dodo or the passenger pigeon and the ivory-billed woodpecker and so many more. And we love to tisk and shake our fingers at the big, bad, greedy, ignorant, rapacious industrialists and market hunters of the past. But if we keep up our smug, better-than-thou attitudes while selfishly ignoring our excess demands on the land, we will be the rapists of the future. By the way, some of the destructive things that are killing off our songbirds include our demands for new housing, new highways, our lawns, golf courses, water, ski resorts, computers, smartphones, furnaces, air conditioners, sports stadiums, cornbread, wine, soybeans, tofu, spinach, coffee, in short, all the conveniences of modern life. Clinging to these while condemning the evil oil producers and the miners and the lumberjacks and the ranchers and the farmers, it's blind or willful ignorance. So it looks like Grandpa Ron got up on his pulpit here and is preaching. But what inspired this was this little release from Ducks Unlimited. They had a chart with them graph lines showing the decline of all these songbirds. And the declines of some of them are as much as 43%. I mean, think about that. Nearly half the entire world population of certain species of songbirds are gone since 1970. It's not like a one-year thing. It's a continual decline. That's huge. And nobody's out shooting them. So we really have to think, what are we doing with our world that songbirds can't even survive anymore? Well, it's simply that there's so many of us taking the world for ourselves. We're not going to leave it for the songbirds when we want a golf course. To heck with whatever was living there before the golf course went in. and the same with lawns and shopping malls and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to make people aware of that. We need to always be conscious of our impact on the world. And if things just keep going on, it's not looking so good. Now I got some responses from that. This is from Samuel Elliott. He said, not all open land needs to be parking lots and condos. Good point. Obviously. And then Donald Tuba said, one thing, both north and south of the border is this trend of everybody getting or wanting an acreage. Most are not big enough to be hobby farms. They're just big enough to displace wildlife and trash more land that can't be hunted due to the occupied buildings being too close. And of course, they always get built right where the wildlife used to live. Good point, Don. And here's Gary Foster. Hey, I share your concerns. There are too many pesticides. There's habitat loss. There's the hideous farm chemicals and the damned cats. Kill the cats. The birds, the numbers will come up. A lot of people weighed in on the cat part of it. They'll say, well, they're predators like raccoons and possums are spreading across the country. Well, those certainly have an effect on ground nesting birds. But when you think of grassland birds, you get out into the wide open spaces that are still left in eastern Colorado and Montana and Wyoming, and there are not a lot of house cats out there, and they're still losing their birds because there are other habitat degradation things going on out there. But it is a big problem. What did they say? 70 billion birds in North America are killed every year by house cats? That's horrible. So, that's another concern. What?
Our cats are contributing to the destruction.
Yeah.
This is a conversation Ron and I have very often.
Well, I wouldn't call it a conversation so much as a controlled debate. Betsy always say, oh, poor kitty, and she lets them out of the lockup, which is the garage. I keep them in the garage all day and then let them out at night because they're going to kill something, but at night they're limited pretty much to mice, various rodents, and the occasional bat that landed. But in the daytime, they're after the songbirds, and you know it. And they will come up with the craziest things. And every once in a while, they'll make an escape. So what do you suppose they brought to the steps the other day? A little red squirrel. Did Betsy feel bad about that? Little dead squirrel, that cute little dead red squirrel?
I did.
That's why I say keep those cats locked up in the daytime. All right, and then Daniel finishes off with an observation. He says, the elephant in the room, human population. And I'm sorry, but that's what it is. If we're here, just like Betsy and me, we've got a footprint. We've got a house, we've got a driveway, we've got cars, we want food, we want water, we want electricity. Everybody contributes. But if there's 2 more of me and Betsy, and then 20 more of me and Betsy's, and somewhere along the line, we're going to run out of space. Well, we hate to end on a sour note, but I don't necessarily think it's a sour note, folks. I prefer to think of it as an opportunity to succeed, to change things. We might call it a call out to everyone to pay attention. It's so easy for us to get all involved with our cartridges and bullets and looking forward to the hunts we're going to enjoy. But as most older hunters can attest, it's getting tougher and tougher to find a place to enjoy those hunts. We have done a remarkable job of restoring wildlife against all of this encroachment that's been going on. But now we've gotten to the point where we're really tight, really running out of chances here because several million acres of ground every year gets lost. And it's usually pheasant hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting habitat. Waterfowl, we've done a good job of restoring some of it. So I just hope you guys join up with Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and the Wild Sheep People and all these different conservation groups that are working to raise money and improve habitat. We have got to do it, or our kids, our grandkids are not going to enjoy the wildlife that we did. It's going to be a pretty sad day in America. So, take heart. Become a conservationist, do what you can, put up some bird boxes, plant some habitat, do your thing, and then we can continue enjoying our guns and ammo and our outdoor traditions. This is Ron Spomer. Thanks for listening. Hunt honest and shoot straight.